Welcome to Assembly Calendar. I'm Mike Friesen. With us for our program today, Assemblyman Al Graf. Al Graf represents parts of Suffolk County in the 5th Assembly District. We want to thank you folks on Long Island for joining us. Assemblyman Graf, nice to see you.
Oh, good to see you too.
We've got lots to talk about today in terms of law enforcement and what the New York State Legislature is doing regarding some of the serious crime issues facing this state right now. And it's kind of interesting. We're taping this show just a day or so after that horrific event down in Orlando, Florida, where one gunman goes in and shoots about 100 people, killing about half of those.
Yeah, and you have to look, and the atmosphere up here is they keep handcuffing the police. They keep taking away, like when we had actually a detail in New York City that were monitoring people, okay, that were targeted for terrorist activities, and they scaled them back, all right? And this person, they knew about him. They questioned him a couple times. You don't know what monitoring was going on or anything else. The other question is, once he did get a gun, how come they weren't notified he had a gun? Why aren't they looking at that? But if you look at some of the stuff that's going on in Albany right now, it's scary. And I mean, I'm the ranker for the codes committees, where it's all the penal law and everything like that. Mm-hmm. And I have to read the legislation coming through. And if you read this legislation, it's crazy. If you look at one piece of legislation, right, what I call the Child Predator Protection Act, what they actually do is, say a guy brings his computer in to a shop to get fixed. They load it up, and it's got all kinds of child pornography on it. They call the police. The police can come, they can't look at the computer. So they have to take an affidavit from that person saying what was on the computer, go to a court, get a court order that they can review what's on the computer. Then they have to go back home or back to the precinct. They have to send a registered letter to the person saying that they are authorized to review the computer, to look at charges for him for, possession of child porn, and can he please bring the computer in?
Well, if it's a registered letter, that means some serious business right there, right?
You think that this registered letter, that computer is ever going to make its way into the precinct? But take that one step further. If they turn around and get knowledge that a person has inclinations to be a terrorist, okay, and the same thing with the computer, and they see all kinds of threats or anything else on the computer, right, or on Facebook threats, the police are handcuffed. They cannot turn around and get a warrant to seize the computer and make an arrest, right? This is the kind of legislation that they're putting in there. It's crazy.
I mean, what would the intent of that be? I mean, you called it the
Child Predator Protection Act.
Child Predator Protection Act. It almost sounds like that's what it would be for. What would the intent of that kind of legislation be?
These people are nuts. They just don't want the cops to enforce the laws. They don't want the cops to arrest people.
You spoke on the floor just about a week or so ago on a bill we've talked about on this program before, having to do with the gravity knives, like the switchblades, and all the talk about gun control and taking away guns from people. But here they wanted to say it wasn't going to be a crime anymore if you got stopped by the police with one of those knives on you.
Well, think about it. You have 1,800 people since January that have been slashed or stabbed in just New York City, right? And that's halfway through. The summer's here now. So that's going to increase, and they're taking another thing away from the police in order to protect people. And you just can't make this stuff up.
Let me show the folks what you said on the floor of the Assembly when that bill came up for discussion. We'll be back to talk more today with Al Graf.
Work it up. We're talking about people charged. We're actually talking about the end result. When it's just a gravity knife, many cases are plea bargained down, or many cases get dismissed on a lot of different ways. So when we're talking prosecution, when a person is sitting there and that's the only thing they have is a gravity knife. The absolute, yes, they're facing a penalty, but them actually getting jail time, especially a first offense, I don't see that happening. And the other thing, I just want to go for this statement that was made that the people being slashed on their faces when they walk down the street, that no gravity knife was used. Okay, I guess they were using a spork. Okay, I can't understand how anyone can make a statement that a folding knife wasn't used in any of these attacks. What I'm saying today is today, with all the stabbings that are going on and all the slashings that are going on, this is not the right time to bring this type of legislation. I would encourage a no vote.
It's strange too because of all the headlines coming out of New York City. They seem so random. These guys just walk up and.
Well, if you look at gravity knife, I'm a retired police officer. It comes out really quick. No different than a switchblade, right, which is still illegal, or a stiletto, which is still illegal. Okay, and one assembly member got up on the floor and said, "Oh no gravity knife was used in 1,800 assaults." Are you kidding me? Seriously? So, I mean, it was a tool that the police could use. And most people, if you're using it for work and there's a lot of discretion with the police department. So, I mean, the arguments they make are just, it's crazy, But going back, to the Child Predator Protection Act / Terrorist Protection Act, there was another bill in there that said that shock program. And what they would do is the person would only get 6 months incarceration for a felony. But they went through a boot camp type thing. But then you have to look at what laws they were talking about. One was a robbery with a weapon where someone got hurt. Another's a burglary, a home invasion with a weapon where somebody gets hurt.
And they want to put these people convicted of these crimes into a boot camp?
Yeah, 6 months and they'll be out. But it gets worse, okay? The other crimes that were included in this was aiding in a terrorist attack, all right? 6 months, boot camp. Criminal possession of a biological weapon, all right? That was another one, 6 months. I look at these people, I go, are you crazy? What is wrong with you people? They are trying to make, I don't know what their goal is, I don't know what their end game is, okay? But they're basically going to make New York, if they had it their way, they would make New York a very dangerous place. I don't know if they're reading these bills, who's writing these bills for them. Unfortunately, fortunately for me, I'm the ranker on code, so I have to read all of this legislation. And I'm telling you, it is mind-boggling.
I get a picture of you sitting there reading it and just kind of shaking your head as to what's in front of you, what you're seeing on the paper.
Oh yeah, it's constant. I mean, everything is under attack. Cops are under attack, right? You look at businesses that are springing up. They want to shut down Uber. They want to shut down Airbnb. I mean, the attacks, right? Little subtle knife cuts, which could kill these different organizations and everything. They're just so wrong on many of the issues. It's unreal.
One of the first things that happened during the de Blasio administration was the elimination of the stop and frisk, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That was pretty successful.
Look, cops right now, if I'm a cop in New York City, you want me to be a report taker? I'll be a report taker, okay? They're not going to put their family's well-being in jeopardy or themselves in jeopardy for people that aren't standing up for them. And the bottom line, cops want to do their job, but they're doing everything they can to handcuff the cops, right, and let the criminals out of jail. Go back to the movie Escape from New York. Anybody that hasn't seen that, take a look at it, because that's what they want New York to be.
When he's not reading those bills and looking at that legislation, Al Graf has been traveling around the state of New York with a task force looking into the heroin crisis in New York State, another big criminal issue facing the state of New York. They traveled around, they listened, they took in all this testimony, and now they've put together a report and they've issued legislation, ideas on how best the state can deal with some of this. I'm going to take a look at some
Sure.
comments that you made at a press conference at the state capitol, and then we'll come back and we'll talk more about that crisis with Al Graf.
Simply put, the time for politics is over. There are people dying out there. There are families that are being destroyed. There are communities that are being devastated. Now is not the time to play political games. Now you're going to get, there's a package over there with the heroin report. The heroin report's been reviewed by people in the industry, and they've come back and what we've heard is it's the best report they've seen out there on the topic. Along with that, you're going to have two bills, one from the minority and one from the majority, that give parents tools in order to help their children, gives family members tools to help their family members, and there's a comparison between the two bills. I would suggest you take a look at the package, you take a look at the differences. And what I'm going to say right now is the press has a responsibility here. It's your job to sit there and shine a light on this. It's your job to take a look at the bills that we give you and help to advocate, help to educate, help to get people to come forward and start yelling and screaming, get this done. So the time for gamesmanship is over. We have a responsibility to our children, to our communities, to our parents, to our grandparents, and you know what? You people are the ones that are going to get our message out there loud and clear. So if we don't do it, more children are going to die. If we don't do it, more parents are going to be grieving. If we don't do it, communities are going to be devastated. It's time to act, knock off the nonsense, and let's get this done.
And you talk about the politics, because there isn't a legislator here at the state capitol who will not say to anyone who asks that the heroin crisis is a real problem and we got to do something about it. But as you noted, there's an Assembly majority bill, an Assembly minority bill, a Senate majority bill, a Senate minority bill, all filled with lots of good ideas, some of them the same. But until you come up with a plan with a leader who brings everybody together and says this is what we're going to do, nothing happens.
Look, we put together a bill. It was backed by people in the industry and stuff, and you actually went to a judge. So a family member could go to a judge and say, my family member is an addict. His whole life is affected by it. He's not able to function in society, right? He is exhibiting criminal behavior, right? And we want him put into rehab. It's based on the Marchman Act in Florida, but we changed it a little bit. And everything's done through a judge. A judge is the one that can turn around and bring the person before them, can issue an arrest warrant, can issue, direct the sheriffs to go pick the person up. The minority bill, it goes through the Department of Social Services, who has no authority to do that. They can ask the person to come in.
They maybe
right?
send a registered letter.
Yeah, there you go. But it's like, it's so watered down that it's not going to do what it's supposed to do. We put a 72-hour hold on a person that ODs, right, and is brought back with Narcan. Their bill, right, hospitals have been bringing the person in, stabilizing them, right, and releases them a couple hours later. What do you think is going to happen? So we put a 72-hour hold on them so the person can go to court, get a court order to force their loved one into rehab. Under their legislation, the hospitals can keep turning people out after they have OD'd. How can you say they're not a danger to themselves or others? It makes no sense.
I think it's interesting. We're out of time. I think it's interesting, though, the government is finally looking at the individuals that are the users end of the equation rather than just the criminal end of the equation to try to fix this thing.
Yes, if we can just get the stupidity out of Albany, we could probably fix this.
And that's the quote of the day right there. Al Graf, thanks for joining us for our program. Thank you, folks, too. See you for our next Assembly Calendar.